Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host, Kushalmehra. Today, we're going to have a discussion on a very specific topic. Before I welcome Aabhas, let me give you guys a brief idea as to why Aabhas and I decided to have this podcast. It is not about Aurangzeb. Before somebody thinks we are going to be talking about Aurangzeb and Aurangzeb only, today's podcast is a much wider discussion about history, about how do we look at this period of what Abbas likes to call the Timurids, which is the accurate description, not the Mughals. It all started with this entire stupid debate again because of the movie Chava, but I did not want to make it about that. I wanted to make it about a much larger and deeper look into the Timurids or the Mughals, as we call them in popular parlance in the pop culture understanding of ourselves. And that's why I reached out to Aabhas A, because Aabhas has already written a book on Babar. I think part two of Babar is in the process of coming out. And Abbas is also writing further books about the Mughal emperors in the future. Now that I have given everybody a brief background as to why we are looking at doing this, is Abbas has a very detailed in look into this. He's read the primary sources, Mughal records, and stuff like that. And that's why we decided to talk about this. So, Abbas, welcome.
Thank you so much, Kushal bhai. It's a pleasure being here on Cārvāka podcast again. And as you explained, that surely this is going to be something where we are not going to either be talking about Aurangzeb, either nor we are going to talk about Akbar, nor we are going to talk about Shah Jahan, Jahangir, whatsoever. We are in general going to talk about the reign of the Timurids, what it was like, what it actually meant to the Indians, whether it was good, bad. People can surely make a judgment around it, looking at the cases which can come in front of their eyes, as how the sources speak about. So I'm sure it can be, maybe it's not a revelation to a lot of people, but it can surely make them bring all the pieces together, because we have everything scattered here and there. Somebody talking about Aurangzeb, somebody talking about Akbar, somebody talking about, say, Shah Jahan, whatnot. So maybe every all these meal pieces can be brought in together, and we can give a holistic picture.
Okay, so first question: when we analyze a historical figure from a specific period, what are the tools that we use in our analysis?
So it becomes so crucial when we are dealing with somebody who is not there to talk about himself or herself. Like, I am going to, when I talk about Babar, surely Babar is not going to come and say in defense that, hey, Abbas, you said this is wrong, and what you said, this was absolutely correct. Nor can Netaji come back and say something. It it goes with all the historical figures. So as far as when it comes to the Timurids, or as in popular parlance it goes as Mughals, comes, everyone becomes a bit too sensitive, and there are multiple reasons to it. We can talk about this too, that why people get so sensitive. Jaise, till very recent time, Aurangzeb was nowhere hero to anybody, right? Everyone called Aurangzeb bigot equally. No one had any problem whatsoever calling Aurangzeb bigot. But suddenly this phenomenon has risen where we are looking at a lot of Aurangzeb lovers coming up, isn't it? And we see that, and if you ask me, Kushal bhai, it's so that had Aurangzeb heard all these kind of praises being hurled upon him, maybe that he could have given the worst of the punishment to these people, because he wouldn't have liked to be seen as they are trying to show him as. And one very important parameter which need to exist in the mind of people is, we need to judge them, or rather talk about them from the perspective which existed back then, how people thought about ruling, how people thought about conquering a state. It was not a concept of a secular state as we are talking about. Like today, somebody will try to make a lot of secular hero out of Shivaji Maharaj. Somebody will try to make secular king out of Aurangzeb. Someone will try to make secular king out of Akbar. It is a very natural phenomenon, and people want to set the heroes or the villains or whatever, the protagonist, antagonist, those figures into the perspective of today, which is terribly wrong. We need to see them from the perspective as how people are looking at their own expansion in their own eyes, right? It's very important. Now we need to go back to the primary sources. Now this is very simplistic to say that we can go back to the primary sources, but one big obstacle which always comes for any historian, which it should come, though may everyone may not call it an obstacle, is that the things are not perfect. The translations which exist, they can be talking something very different than what actual text would be talking about. A lot of things is lost in the politics of the translation. Say you pick Babar Nama, which talks about which is like an autobiography of Babar. But when you pick one translation, it will vary to a degree of 5% from the second translation, and henceforth it you will see that difference, because everybody who was translating in the British era was trying to appease their own reporting managers. It was a very regular norm, right? It was not, if a beverage comes up with by making Babar bit too notorious Islamist, then actually he would have been, again, people may call me a bigot today, that I'm trying to say that beverage made a bit more bigger Islamist out of Babar. But this is the truth, because Beveridge was an academician. She was an academician. She was working for the British. But the academician side of the Britishers were very evangelical in nature. They had equal number of hatred for the Hindus as they had for the Muslims. They, for them, both of them were equal enemies when it comes to their own larger agendas. So in their translations you will see a lot of tinge which goes against the Islamic rulers often. So we have to filter that out. And in the kind of environment where we live in today, right, where polarization becomes a clickbait, when the moment you raise a bit of emotion that, this is for the religion, this is for the faith, and the whole of a crowd will come either to stand with you or just distance themselves from you. In this era, it becomes so critical, it becomes so dicey for a biographer like me, that what exactly do I put, how people are going to see my work, because my work needs to be read. We need to make sure that these biographies are read by the people. So in that case, we have to take a absolute path of bringing the whole black white. I won't call it gray, because gray is a mixture of black and white. I would say there's a lot of black and a lot of white. We need to bring all those black and all those white together for the people to see that what that historical figure is about. Say that somebody has committed a murder, he's already a crime doer to me. It doesn't matter that even if we give 100 crores of charity to anybody, it doesn't matter. A murderer is a murderer. It's done. It's a game over for him. Now, when we come to these historical figures, people will do what about tree that, oh, इसने यहाँ तो दान भी दिया था, यहाँ डोनेशन दिया था इस मंदिर को, कि ठीक है वो सारे फरमान्स भी तो हैं. There's a lot of what about tree, but the policies are something which will speak more about that personality than this pick and choose business. Like 1,000 में से एक business does not mean that all 9,999 which exist are not the business. They are the larger business for the person, right? Those remaining acts. So we need to look at this picture in this way, that we focus on the policies of the people, what laws they are implementing, what they're thinking to do for the people around, how much focus they have on the education, how much focus they have on science and technology, how much they really care about the society.
No, but to your point on this entire, let's say they, they gave an example of a temple being built or something else being built. So how do you do a measurement of those incidents?
So, see, when it comes to the point of finding out whether a temple has been built or has, if I've got a question right, you are trying to portray this, that how do we find out that whether a particular emperor really gave a aid for the temple or helped in the construction of temple or not, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah. So so I'll pick a most sensational case right now. Say pick the example of Aurangzeb. Now, and if we pick the case of Kashi Vishwanath Mandir directly, that which is the talk of the moment. So now the case comes that people do pick certain literature which says the stories otherwise. And I'm sure that when we were doing the podcast with Vikram, you came across a lot of stories that how people defend that if Aurangzeb would have destroyed the temple, there were n number of reasons. One reason being that the Brahmins were troubling a Rajput princess or the queen rather, and that's when he got so frustrated by the bigotry of the Brahmins, and that's when he thought that this is the place where the evil acts happen. So let's destroy it. Now, this story comes from a very later literature. It's a very cooked up story which is circulates in the Marxist circle. A lot of farmans of Aurangzeb, which was later discovered in mid of the 20th century. Bishambar Nath Pandey is one man who came up with a list of farmans, and they published a literature in, if I'm not wrong, around 1980s or 1970s. Certainly, a lot of farmans were discovered, and those farmans speak about the Aurangzeb giving aid to the temples. Now, when we are talking about those farmans, the first question arises that why those farmans were not existing in any Persian literature before. I understand that there are some copies of the farmans which are existing and which, as claimed by Mr. Pandey, comes from certain pujaris of the temple. Fine, we understand that you have got a copy, but at the end of the day, that is a copy of the farman. Where is the actual farman? Why those farmans were never spoken about in the in any of the documents? Say that Masire Alamgiri. Masire Alamgiri is complete collection of a lot of court judgments and the policies which were made by Aurangzeb. And for the ease of the people, people can refer to it because Jadunath Sarkar did translate it extensively. And it was translated by Shaki Mustaq Khan a couple of years after the demise of Aurangzeb. And he was given complete access to the court records of the empire. He had complete access. Everything else, whether you talk about Manuchi and other travelers, say Kafi Khan, etc., they were not the authorized people, as in they did not have the access to the original documents. But when it comes to the Masire Alamgiri, it has a lot of references from the court policies, a lot of decisions be taken exactly, which talks about the destruction of a temple at mass. And as collated by Sitaram Goel, he counted around 200 temples being raised by Aurangzeb. And it comes exactly from his farmans. But when it comes to these farmans, which come in support of saying that Aurangzeb gave grant to certain temples, we find no reference in those documents whatsoever. We all have the hearsays that, and he's the same B.N. Pandey who also populated this whole idea that Tipu Sultan gave aid to a lot of temples. He produced a list of 156 odd temples, and we don't know that what exactly was the source of this the list of the temples what he got that Tipu Sultan was giving a aid. And he certainly came up with the idea that the British Empire and their scholars wanted to legitimize their two biggest of enemies. The one is Mughals, second is Tipu Sultan. So they said a lot of ills about them, and we lost the all the good things what the people like Tipu or Aurangzeb would have done. It completely was lost. Now, this man, B.N. Pandey, comes up with those literature, but we don't find reference in the old works. Neither we find those references as an original because they're all the copies which he is talking about. Apart from that, his Masire Alamgiri talks very clearly about Kashi temple. Masire Alamgiri also talks about the Chintamani temple. Masire Alamgiri clearly talks about Mathura temple. So we see that when it comes to the policy, even if we assume for a while that these farmans, which are talking about the grant to the temple, they were not part of the policy of the Aurangzeb largely. Policy was to raise the temple, bring them down. And so whatever is your policy speaks aloud more of you that what you exactly want to do. And there's one very strong hypothesis that because after the fall of Dara Shuko, when he had already gotten rid of the Arashuko, and he was also trying to get rid of other brothers. Shuja had got a lot of support of the Hindu nobleman and the people in Kashi and the area nearby. So in that period of 1659, 58, 59, 60, he was trying to get a lot of support of the local Hindu people. It's the initial days of his reign as the emperor. So how can he start to rule the people while those Hindus are siding with his enemy right now? He first needs to get them in confidence. So obviously, initially it became a part of a policy to give a bit of aid, but largely he was a very much of a Buddhishikan, somebody who destroyed temples, because there is one instance where Shah Jahan had a policy of letting temple get away by giving a certain amount of tax. They will just give a certain amount of tax and they can do the puja and everything was fine. But he came up with this idea that they can't get away by just paying a small amount of tax. They need to pay the jizya. And this incident happens in Agra when he observes in a temple that temples are getting away by just paying a bit of tax. Then he imposed a heavy jizya on all of them, and he talks very clearly to his court members that by the jizya is a very good soft policy by which he can convert more and more Hindus, because it will become very inconvenient for them. And again, these are not hearsays what I'm saying. These are coming from authentic primary sources which speaks about his intention very clearly. So it becomes quite it's incumbent upon us that how do we really analyze this character now when his policies directly are saying that you need to bring jizya because you need to Mohammedanize whole of India. His policies are strictly like he wants to make the Hindus more and more uncomfortable. How do you expect that he's giving aid to the Hindu temples for a goodwill, or he has some very noble thing to do? So that way, I think we can surely find out that whether the stories of giving aid are true or not, whether they're helping to the construction of the temples are true or not.
Yeah, but then what do you make of Eaton's work? Eaton clearly states that, right, in his work.
Yes. So when it comes to Eaton, so see, Eaton is quite clear about a few things. Let's pick the positives initially. That of course he has reduced down the list of temples drastically compared to what Sitaram Goel has done. According to him, very less temples were raised, right? But still, he has picked up quite a few temples which were raised by Alamgir, Aurangzeb too, right? And likewise by many other invaders or whatever. Like it's very tough to give name, whatever name people may like to give. So those people did demolish temple. There is a record by Eaton too. Now Eaton, this story, there was one historian named Jackson even before Eaton, who was trying to critique Professor K.S. Lal long back. And in fact, he became very critical of work of K.S. Lal when he spoke about the growth of the Muslim population. And one book was there, The Growth of the Muslim Population in India. Yeah, that was the book's name. So then the argument which K.S. Lal brought, and which should be my argument too for this, that you do a lot of pick and choose, and one instance comes and you just start to make a person too noble. You make him somebody who is too good to his people and the subjects, etc. While when I pick and choose 999 other cases which are more against the Hindus, you blame me of the pick and choose. Everyone does pick and choose, but it all depends that what you are picking, what you're choosing, and what in what context you're doing. Eaton's argument falls flat when it comes to a lot of temples, including the. In fact, Eaton has given a lot of arguments in Kashi's case too. A lot of stories, which in fact has been debunked by Vikram Sampath as well in his Kashi work. So, and apart from that, when Eaton talks about the Alamgir's aid, which is further more reinforced by Audrey Tuskegee, because Eaton's works becomes a very principal work for Audrey Tuskegee as she works, and Audrey Tuskegee and Eaton's works are now taken by a lot of people ahead. They also picked the certain farmans which are very contemporary, all discovered by Mr. B.N. Pandey in 1978-76. We have no actual reference to when those farmans have appeared for the help to the temples. Because even when I just give you one parallel case, Mr. Punya spoke about Ram Punya spoke about Babar's will. I am just deviating a bit so that I can set a bit of context. That Babar will says that Humayun is supposed to protect the cows because Hindus consider cows to be very sacred. He needs to take care of temples, and there's a lot of thing that what you will expect in Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb written in the text. Now that very Humayun's will appears in 18th century. That's the oldest reference to it, and the Persian written in that, and I'm able to judge it because I can read the Persian of that era, the 16th century, when the Akbar got Babar Nama translated. So I'm sure that had it been that Persian, the language would have been same. The Persian style would have been, it's completely different again. But this is a very small argument. It's not a very mighty argument which can make the argument of Mr. Punya fall flat. Argument is that when this instance is happening, Humayun is not sovereign, and in this will, Humayun has been shown as a sovereign. Now, neither Babarnama, of course, does not talks about his will at all, nor the text written by Duglat. Duglat was a contemporary of Babar who was a cousin of Babar actually, and he wrote again a document explaining about the Babar's rise, fall, everything. That also does not talk about this will. Humayun Nama does not talk about that will. So that will is absent from all the documents till the we come to the 18th century. Likewise, all the arguments which Eaton makes many times, those arguments have no references whatsoever in the very contemporary period. We don't find any sources for whatsoever, and I can tell it because they clearly don't exist. Anyone can find it out. There's no sources for it. It does not appear from any Muslim literature whatsoever in that era.
All right, so there is someone who has raised this question, and I'll exit the stream and come back because somebody's saying there is some voice crackle at my end. I don't know why. So so I'll have to restart the whole thing, but it will just take me 2-3 minutes. So somebody's saying while reading Trushki's book on Aurangzeb, I noticed several temple protection farmans are cited from Gyan Chandra. Curious, who was he, and are his sources academically verified? So तुम आंसर दो आभास. I will just restart. Everything remains the same. I'll just restart and join you again. ठीक है?
Sure, sure. So when it comes to it's actually the story of the Chand dynasty where some donations and the thing has been spoken about. I think you were speaking about King Gyan Chandra, who reigned in the period of say 1670 to 1780 or something. And so there is one copper inscription which happens to be in 1701, copper inscription which happens to be in 1703. Then there is talk about the Patal Bhuveshwar. So there are inscriptions which talk about it, 4 or 5 of them, if I'm not wrong. I don't recall it very rightly, but there are 4 or 5 of them. Now, okay, now you pick this Farmans, that's absolutely fine. Now, my counter argument is this, that, you need to understand that, let's take the example of Hitler for a while, okay? And I've written this a few days back also about it, the Hitler Aurangzeb paradox. So, in fact, when you talk in context of Hitler, so who was Hitler's legal advisor? Hitler's legal advisor was Hans Frank. Hans Frank, who had a Jewish ancestry, right? Then there was a man named Edward Bloch. He was a Jewish doctor who treated Hitler's mother. So Hitler did make exception for this man. Now there was a man named Erhard Milch. He was the person who created Luftwaffe. The key man, Luftwaffe was the air force of Hitler. And he again had the Jewish lineage. Now, there is one very interesting agreement in 1933, which is called the Hawara Agreement. Hawara Agreement allowed the German Jews to migrate to the Palestine. So now, even while he's allowing this migration into the Palestine, does not mean that Hitler laid the foundation for the Israel's future. So someone can come and say 50 years down the line, or maybe people are already saying it. I can see it on social media that Hawara Agreement at times is considered as something which was like a genesis for the creation of the state of Israel. But we know that truth is very far from it, right? Because in fact, like how Hitler destroyed the Hindu temples, the Hitler also led to the destruction of a lot of synagogues. A lot of things like that happened. So when the lot of sanction was put against the Jews, while jizya tax was a tool of humiliation for the Hindus. So you can see a lot of similarities. So all those two three anomalies which exist there cannot really make up a case for somebody being the way we are trying to portray him as, right? And while Aurangzeb was in his deathbed, he said one thing that I have committed my whole life for the Mohammedan cause and to fight the enemies of the Muslims. Now, who were the enemies of Muslims, right? When you're talking about the enemies of the Muslims, when you make this case very clearly in the era of say 1706-7, and you're talking about the enemies of the Islam, then enemies of the Islam are clearly defined by the book, who they are, right? So it means that he clearly spoke about it. And there's a lot of recorded evidences of around 200 temples which have been destroyed by Aurangzeb very clearly. And the reason definitely being told that his war is against the infidel, his war is against the kafir. So when he is making it already very clear that his battle is against the kafir, his battle is against the infidel, then how then these anomalies can even help us to see a picture whether he was sent at all? It really does not help the cause, isn't it? I'm sure that most of you will agree to it. And as I explained already few moments back, the initial donation which Aurangzeb had given to the temples or was having a few, and in fact, I would like also to address this point that many times it is said that there were a lot of Hindu nobles who were in the court of Aurangzeb. But again, because he had already get rid of Dara Shuko, he had to make get the people in confidence who were already aligned with his other brother Shuja. So in that case, he had to win the heart of the Hindus. It was very simple, and this policy of having Hindus in the court was something which was continuing from the period of Akbar, of course, for a lot of political reason. So this was an existing thing. So once you come immediately into the power, you cannot undo it. But very soon, it was just after that when he really undid all these things, and his court was completely filled by Muslims, and there was not much place for the Hindus, though a lot of a few Hindus existed in the court. But these anomalies cannot cover up for what Aurangzeb stood for. It certainly cannot, right? So it's worthless to say that cherry pick all those cases that Aurangzeb gave donation to this temple and that temple. And as I told you that for many of our cases, we don't find the original evidences at all. So the whole point is that when the whole world is condemning Hitler for whatever he did with the Jews, Aurangzeb has already done the more dirtiest with the Hindus. So why are we even getting into this whataboutery that okay, he gave donation to these few temples, there's an inscription available for it. Why are we interested even to know the good side of Aurangzeb to make him a good man? There is no harm looking at those documentation, because I am a firm believer of this idea that once you do a biography of somebody, you need to look for the dark, the black side, the white side, the good and the bad. You need to look all of them. But while you look at all of them, for we Indians, certainly Aurangzeb can nowhere be a good emperor, and by no measure at all, right? And in fact, when we get
My
into this, yes,
laptop has completely crashed. I have to switch my laptop. So before I go, I want to ask this next question. It's not about whether Aurangzeb was good or bad. The point they are trying to do is they find one or two good deeds of Aurangzeb, and that is the thing they do it with every historical figure. So how do we calculate how much good or how much bad is done? That's what I'm trying to get at.
yes. So it's a very good follow-up question, Kushal, and in fact, uh, see, it's very important that when we analyze a historical figure, if we get into the policies, as I was reinforcing earlier too, uh, without understanding the policies, we cannot get to the get the clarity that what exactly that very emperor would be doing. Like Aurangzeb policies were very clear that it is against the Hindus. There is no doubt about it. And if in pretext of doing something good in politics to get the polity going, right? If you do one or two good deeds, right, they can never be the measure of somebody uh, being good to the Hindus or say the non-Muslim back then, because his policies are very anti-Hindu right from beginning. Now, when it comes, like, let's pick the government of the day to day itself. I did not wanted to drag it, but just to set the context and the things right. So there is no policy of the government as such which can be called anti-Muslim, right? But there have been some deeds like 2 days back, last day itself, the Work Act has been made weaker, right? So when that happened, so does it mean that it has become anti-Muslim? No. What it did is that it tried to undo a lot of ills of what was happening because of the this draconian law of the Work Act. Similarly, when we talk about the Aurangzeb and his policies through and throughout are very much anti-Hindu, because he makes the declaration very clear right from beginning when he said that the temples which are getting away by paying a little of a tax, we need to apply jizya, right? Because if you don't apply the jizya, there will be no reason why they will not convert to Islam. There will be no reason why you can increase the number of increase the number of Muslims. How you can Islamize the whole of a world? He was quite clear about it, right? So in that case, how we even think about seeing Aurangzeb in a bright light for India? He never, it can never make a sense to me. And in fact, when it comes to his policies, while he was giving, people are talking about him giving donation to the temples, right? Okay, we can take this quite a few cases. Say they can be counted on the fingers. They are not many, right? But you can't count on fingers that how many temples he destroyed, right? From Kashi, Mathura to Chintamani temple, and so on and on. He kept doing it, and which is further his act against the, say, the Sikh gurus. What he does with the Sikh gurus, that again is very disheartening. What he did with the Sahibzades, right? And what was the reason which we are being told by the primary sources? It was nothing to do with the policy whatsoever. It has more to do, it has nothing to do with the act against the enemy. It had more to do with the religion too, because the provision of conversion was given to the gurus, but they denied to do it, and they decided to stand firm for their sect faith, right? So there is no way all these quite countable deeds of Aurangzeb can be seen as something which happened like good to the Hindus at all. There was no good light for the Hindus, and in fact, it's very interesting to note that while people harp around one thing, that in the reign of Aurangzeb, in fact, the economy had also boomed and we were doing great because we were one third of the world's GDP share. But the truth is that the truth is this, that while you're talking about GDP share, which actually was not one third as people say, it was around 28, 27%, 25% in the reign of Aurangzeb, which is based on Angus Madison studies. Now, but the whole thing was like that GDP per capita growth was entirely negative. You know, you are listening to me, that GDP per capita was entirely negative, GDP per capita growth. Now, imagine if an empire's wealth is increasing, which is a GDP share, right? It's increasing to some extent. It means that money is being added to the empire. But while GDP per capita, as in how much money, average money, each and every individual has, is declining, right? What does it speak out? It speaks out that perhaps empire is extorting a lot of money. They are they are not letting people. They are extorting a lot of money. Money is being used for their own luxuries. It is being used for many other things. Like they are the instances of this small temple donations. But let me take you to this fact that Aurangzeb's caravans used to go to the Makkah carrying money not less than 6 lakhs of rupees or 7 lakh rupees per trip. And there was a saying back then in in Makkah that Hindustan se khajana aa raha hai, so whole the Muslim world will flock around there because everyone wanted to try their luck out to get some or the little wealth or something, whatever they can get. So the money which was being taken was being diverted out of here and it was being taken to somewhere else for some larger cause. He spent a lot of money even on getting back the Samarkand. He also had like a lot of interest in going back to where the home relies, and he has called himself always Turani. And in fact, his court was also full of a lot of people of the foreign descent, right? They were not Indians. If you can, if you look for the later records after say 1669 onwards, you will find that most of the people in his court are non-Indians. Forget them being a Muslim; they are non-Indians, right? So he had a lot of contempt against the his subjects largely, a lot of contempt against the Hindus, a lot of contempt against anybody who does not align with his thought, and what he did with Sambhaji Maharaj or whatever he did with the Sikh
I have
Guru.
a question here. I have a question here.
Yes.
How do we measure contempt against Hindus? I know. See, my job is to ask these questions like what an Audrey or Eaton would raise. Like, how do you measure contempt against
Yeah. So as I was saying, Kushal, so what
against
happens that
Hindus? And I'm
yes.
very sorry about this live stream train wreck for the record.
Okay, so it becomes you know it's very tough to measure that how good or bad a person is about something. Either, like I said initially, that either it's about black or white. So if we say that if you want to measure that how much black of a person is, it becomes very tough to give a rating to it or a numbers to it or to put an amount to it or make it a vector. It really looks impossible. But largely, what comes into the picture to us is that Aurangzeb policies, all the policies, he had not a single policy which was pro-Hindu. Now, again, even if say a couple of instances or 4 or 5 instances of giving donation to the temple is coming, it does not mean that it is a policy because there is not a single policy of Aurangzeb which is pro-Hindu because he has introduced jizya. He has introduced furthermore of the taxation, pilgrimage taxes are there. Then he has this policy of diverting the money of the Hindus outside India for the non-Hindu causes. He is fighting the battle with the people claiming that even, in fact, the charges which was brought against the Sambhaji Maharaj, people make a lot of hearsay stories, right? That this was the case and that was the case based on many other records. But what Masire Alamgiri says that he had become one primary enemy of the Islam because what he did in Rampur, it was more than the what Aurangzeb would have ever imagined. Like the a lot of Muslims were killed, a lot of them were taken slaves, and a lot of things. Now, maybe that a lot of things were exaggeration, but one thing was very clear that he was trying to pin down everybody in the name of Islam. He was very clear about it, and we don't find a single instance where he is there to stand for a single Hindu cause. Now, Kashi, Mathura are like the primary centers for the Hindus. And why exactly he decided to bring those temples down? Because obviously he was seeing that there's a conflict of people who converge to that very point because that's the center where the like Kashi was always seen as a light for the Hindus very much, and that's the reason why he did it. Now I'm also going to bring a lot of revelation in my Babar too, where I will talk about the Babri Masjid, where I do see that it was perhaps Aurangzeb who had this intention of, in fact, he did the destruction of temple rather than being Babar. So all our primary centers, Kashi, Mathura, and Ayodhya, were largely affected by Aurangzeb. And all these records have been taken by the Manushi. He has spoken about it. His Masire Alamgiri speaks about it. The Kafi Khan also speaks about it in his text, and all other contemporary farmans, etc., which have been there. They have always been with the direction that how do I bring down the Hindus this way or that. Like I'll just give you an example. Like so, he says that the temple of Somnath was demolished early in my reign, and idol worship there put down. It is known. It is not known what the state thinks there is present. The idolaters have again taken to the worship of images at the place. Then destroy the temple in such a way that no trace of the building may be left, and also expel them, that is, the worshippers from the place. Now, this comes in Kalimat e Tayyibbat. Now, you can understand from the language that what he means to say. And when in fact he has so much contempt against the Hindus, and he was because like is a very satirical saying what said. He said that demolition of a temple is possible at any time, as it cannot walk away from its place, because he was always prepared to destroy any temple. And he said this in context that, even if you don't kill the people, you keep destroying the temples, because that's not going to move. Even the people will go, you are always free to destroy the temples, right? So he was quite very clear that what he wants to do with the Hindus. Now I'll just give you another very example. So, and it appears in early 1650s. It has been decided, according to our canon law, that long-standing temple should not be demolished. I'm just setting the context, which people quote and how. But no new temple allowed to be built. Information has reached our court that its environs and certain Brahmins who have the right of holding the charge of the ancient temples there, and that they further desired to remove these Brahmins from their ancient office. Therefore, our royal command is that you should direct that in future no person shall in unlawful ways interfere with or disturb the Brahmins and the other Hindus resident of the. Now I said this farman which appears in 1659. As I was talking earlier, this is the era where Aurangzeb is trying to appease a lot of Hindus, because he's trying to reinforce his reign. He had just come into the power, and Hindus are the powerful one. They are the subjects. How can you just start an empire or your reign by just going against those who are aligned with your enemies, right? But the things further changes. He is very clear, and like in then this is early 1660s, this farman comes in Ahmedabad and other parganas of Gujarat. In the days before my accession, temples were destroyed by my order. They have been repaired and idol worship has been resumed. Carry out former orders. So he's saying that पहले मेरे orders से temple destroy हुए थे, but what I have found that idol worship has again started. Now carry out my former orders. He's saying it in 1665. Now, as he further goes ahead, while he's on a deathbed, he says that I die happy, for at least the world will be able to say that I have employed every effort to destroy the enemies of Mohammedan faith. Now, again, this can be saying that enemies of the Mohammedan faith, people today will say that it does not mean the Hindus or whatsoever. But in his context, certainly the Hindus were enemies, which comes very clear from the earlier text of Aurangzeb. And there are a lot more texts to substantiate this. I can keep on quoting as if you ask me to. There are a lot of sources around Aurangzeb.
So now let's pivot from Aurangzeb. Enough has been said about this, person, historical joker. I call him the historical joker of India. Before people get offended, I don't care if you're offended. I have a very low opinion of most ancient people, other than a few exceptions here and there. Everybody's ancestors, people have this rosy image about the ancestors. And you know what happens, Abbas, in my opinion, is there is this rosy assumption about the past. Everybody thinks their ancestors were awesome. And they suck right now, their current state of affairs. Because see, as far as our current state of affairs is concerned, we know it is for a fact because we experience it, we live it. So we kind of, have this very rosy image कि ये लोगों के साथ तो कुछ होता ही नहीं होगा. ये लोग तो एक picture perfect life जीते होंगे. And ये है ना, this rosy image of the past, it transforms in different ways. It transforms as my ancestors knew everything with some Hindu chauvinists. And with Muslim apologists, it transforms into देखा मुगल से अच्छा तो कोई टाइम ही नहीं था जी.
मुगल के टाइम पे तो हम सब लड्डू खा रहे थे, फाफड़ा जलेबी खा रहे थे, और कुछ होता ही नहीं था। वो उसने वो मंदिर तोड़ा, वो पॉलिटिकल था। अरे भाई, आज की डेट में लोग एक दूसरे को रिलीजन पे मार रहे हैं, और आज की डेट पे पर कैपिटा रिलीजियोसिटी इज फार लेस देन व्हाट इट वाज एट दैट टाइम. यू आर टेलिंग मी that per capita religiosity, when it is more in the past compared to today, you're telling me people are not killing on the basis of religion at that time, and people are killing on the basis of religion at this time. Like, do you think any of this makes sense?
Well, this is so illogical because uh, a people have this idea or the nostalgia of the past. Everyone, and when I say everyone, I am using the word under the quote everyone. Right, I'm not making an exception. Everyone wants to go back to a cherished past. And when this happens, there you can walk to a very slippery slope because there's a case that because you have not seen your ancestors, maybe that whom you are trying to idealize can be the worst of the people because you have not seen that what the actual truth is. Like a lot of people think so good about Ashoka. I'm just giving an example from my Indic point of view. You know, like Ashoka ke samay mein sab kuch changa tha, sab kuch, everything was so perfect. We were doing so much for the animal cows, etc. There can be many thoughts around it, right? But Ashoka, Ashoka was, if we took the Sri Lankan perspective around the Ashoka, we'll be taken aback. He is called Chand Ashoka not just for a simple reason. He did a lot of things even to get to the throne, and his story is no different from Aurangzeb to start with, right? Again, people will can call me names, call me out. Rather, it's your podcast, so you will get more gali. but uh, but the
भाई,
truth
I am
lies
with you
that
on
way.
the Ashoka thing. Ashoka ने क्या गंदे गंदे काम किए historically यार.
Yes,
मतलब, how can you support? How can you
yes,
defend such acts? Like, you don't. You
yes,
just move on.
yes. So now, if I'm not shying away to talk about Ashoka, a rational person or a rationalist person rather would be that it doesn't matter that if I'm a Muslim, I'm happened to born in a Muslim family per se, right? Or somebody is happened to born in a Hindu family. किसी का वो नहीं रहता है, right? Anyone can be born anywhere. Now it's up to us and how we start to idolize our idols. किसको हम idol देखना शुरू करते हैं, ये हमारे ऊपर है. Now if people are looking at Aurangzeb as an idol, or say any invader as an idol, it becomes a critical problem. Problem is this that recently I wrote about this whole idea of Stockholm syndrome, and it was just not a very simplistic way I tried to put it. My intention was to say that I still have a conviction that I have belief in humanity. I'll tell this that I certainly have belief in humanity, and I believe that people have this sense to make a distinction between what is good and bad. I have इतना तो भरोसा है मुझे. I trust it. So just people should start looking at the act of these heroes whom they make out of. Say it's Babar, Taimur, or Ashoka, or anybody. Sit quietly, look at their acts, and just start to judge that. Imagine that you are doing this act, or your child is supposed to do this act. If you are a parent, would you approve of it in a civil society? Right? Then directly that can make us think that what we are making out of what examples we are going to set out for the people, because you will never see a debate around Abdul Kalam Azad, right? You will never see a debate around our President Kalam. You will never see a debate around a lot of people who have made a lot of contribution to the country despite being Muslim. It's because they knew they were very much Bharatiya enough to contribute for the country. They were very much Indian. They understood that. But you will never see people fighting for the President Kalam. But someone will say that, President Kalam mein the problem tha because he was reading Bhagavad Gita, he was playing sitar, wo to Muslim the hi nahi. Okay, fine, because perhaps maybe by definition of Muslim it may not, because Quran defines in a certain way. It may not, but surely he was born in a Muslim family. He can be a perfect idol for the people. But people tend not to talk about Dara Shuko. Again, it is a very lot of people even retrospect this that even if Dara Shuko would have become a king, perhaps he would have done a lot of. But it's a retrospection. But we know that Dara Shuko was bit too much into the Indic philosophies. He was studying Upanishads, he was translating the things, and he was scholar par excellence. But no one is talking about Dara Shikoh. Why our OEC brothers don't talk about Dara Shikoh? he contributed a lot to the discourse. It was not that he was scholar par excellence. People don't talk about Bahadur Shah Jafar's children whose head was chopped off and the head was brought in front of. Today they will just take in the name of Bahadur Shah Jafar because they want to ignite this Muslim flame that Muslims were also part of it. There's a whole matter of political parties. But what is interesting, Kushal bhai, it was Sayyid Ahmad Khan, the founder of the Aligarh Muslim University. He wrote a booklet in 1958 and he gives a very good litmus test to the people. And he says that, and he was considered very progressive, by the way. He was considered like a progressive elite Muslim. He came up with a booklet criticizing the 1857 revolution or 1857 War of Independence. And he said that true Muslims did not take part in the revolution or the war. And that book is easily available. 50-60 page ka book hai, log ek raat mein padh sakte hain. And he says that he calls Bahadur Shah Jafar heretic. He says that everybody who took part are not the people of the book, because you should ally with the Britishers because they are the people of the book. He's saying it, and now he's considered as a progressive. But this progressive, this progressive person is invoking the idea of the people of the book and saying that those who have fought against the British are not the true Muslims. True Muslims should support the Britishers. Now, for a lot of people, this man, the founder of the AMU, is also like a hero. Like he's considered, even in the parliaments, the examples are given that he was the progressive Muslim who gave a new part to the Muslims and whatnot. But he is making this kind of distinctions. Now, the question arises that when Shahid Wahiullah or Dehlavi, he said that now the whole empire of Islam is trembling in India. He says it, and because the Marathas have come up, the Jats have come up, and these are the three sects he talk about: Jats, Sikhs, and the Marathas. They are troubling us, and now he invokes the Afghan king to come and invade, so that again the rule of Islam can be established. Now he is bringing a case that in the rule of the Mughals or the Timurids, rather, there is a dominance of the Islam, and the Muslims and the Hindus were certainly subordinate. And he also talks about that we have always been a natural rulers, and this is the same word which was used by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan in his booklet, that Muslims have been the natural rulers. So after the Mughals, whoever should be the rightful ruler of the country, it should come with some Muslims only. We are the aristocratic people, right? So it's very important that the idealization of the right kind of heroes begin to happen. But even all these figures, like I give the example of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, even he's so talented, but he's seen as the idol because he established a university which is a central government funded university, if I'm not wrong, and which still adorned the picture of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. But again, I don't see in मेरे लिए तो I'm complete, मेरे लिए freedom of expression absolute, so it doesn't matter much to me. But the idea is that the people have been
No, but I have a question here.
Yes.
I have a question here. Sorry to come here.
Yes.
So we are using both Ashoka and Aurangzeb, or Akbar for that matter. Now the thing is, when you talk about Akbar or Aurangzeb, we bring their religiosity into question. But when it comes to Ashoka, would you say what he did was driven by his religion?
Oh yes, and initially it was certainly not in the name of religion, because he was just somebody lusting around to get the throne. If I put it in a very straight words, right? Whatever assassinations he does and the political killings. But later on, when he became the Buddhist, and there's a common notion that he became Kalinga War happened, and he just all of a night suddenly he realized that all this killing and everything is nonsense, and he should come to the Sharan of Dhamma. But even 4 years before it, he was already a lay Buddhist. And after that, also we find the inscription where he says that I am further going to demolish or destroy the people who sway by the path of Dhamma. You have to follow the path of Dhamma. But what very interesting phenomenon is see that though he does the persecution of the Ajivikas, which comes in a common parlance. It's out there in the literature. It's available for us to read. At the same time, in his reign, the religions flourished. There was no such sanctions per se against the religion. So he was killing in the name of religion. So it cannot be said that he was not a bigot. Because if you are killing in the name of religion or doing a persecution against a particular community, it means that you have got a content and you want to carry that content forward with the act of the violence. He did it. But when it comes to Aurangzeb, it goes like the scale is too up. Right? It can only be compared perhaps by the wrath of the Hitler. Only in the time of Hitler that technology was so advanced, the things were so different. Again, I'm not trying to romanticize any kind of killing, but just to set the context to the people, they would say that औरंगजेब ने उतना तो नहीं मारा ना जितना जितना निर्दयी हिटलर था या because it also is about had Aurangzeb been in the laps of similar technology, maybe that he would have given the worst to us. Who knows? Because while you were a bit offline, Kushal bhai, I gave the example to the people that the Hitler's Air Force, the pioneer man was a Jew. And the Havara Agreement, which happened in 1933, according to which Jews were led to come to the Palestine, right, in 1933. It does not mean that Hitler becomes the father of the state of Israel, right? So, while these anomalies do exist, and when we are trying to make the comparisons, we have the figures in the recent time also who have walked the same path, done some acts to appease a few. At the same time, by larger by the policy, they have worked to and highlight a particular community. Holistically, Hitler is one of them which comes very close to our memory because it's a very recent one. And it's really, I would say that ironic if we are not able to make this comparison. We spoke about Ashoka, we spoke about Aurangzeb, and now we are talking about, say, Hitler. All three in a very different time periods. Perhaps the psychosis or the psych exists similar. I won't say that they're much different, but surely, while Hitler was not driven by that bigotry of the religion, as in his religion was not push. Someone will say that it was the Catholic idea and all, but that looks more like a very conspiracy theories to me. Hitler had this natural contempt against the Jews from beginning. Perhaps we can talk about it sometime later, maybe when we talk about my next book. But when it comes to Aurangzeb, especially, he was certainly driven by the hatred to the book because the theology pushed him to it and used theology as much as possible, like how the ISIS would do, how Al Qaeda would do. He was no different to them.
So then how do we place Akbar in this entire scenario? Akbar, and also which Akbar, man? Akbar, when he was young, was a very different person. Then he reaches a certain age, he's a very different person. Then he reaches his latter age, he's a completely different person. So, I mean, which Akbar are we talking about? Now, I have tried to read the N.A. Akbari and all of that. I've read translations. I have not read the actual language. I've read translations. I tried to read multiple translations of these, Muslim court historians and other people. Yeah, magar, how do we judge Akbar? Akbar was clearly not like Aurangzeb, in my humble opinion. He was much more balanced. He was Jallad when he had to be Jallad. But later on, when he realized he cannot, control a giant country which he was trying to control through these barbaric things, he changed. Now I'm not saying he changed through the warmness inside his heart, but whether he had warmness in his heart or not should not matter in the first place, is all I'm saying. He changed, and we can only judge a historical figure by his or her policies, is my point.
Yes. So, Akbar is a very interesting character. And as a post Babar, when I take up Akbar, I'm not taking up Humayun right now. I'm quickly jumping to Akbar. Because the reason why I'm pushed to Akbar, because as a person who's looking at the biographies, looks like a very interesting character. Because he gives you all the shades. When he kills Raja Hemchandra, people know him by the Hemu name, but so he's instructed to, he slaughters, chops the head while he is lying without the weapon. And when we begin to look at his mercilessness from that period till then, when he reaches to the stage when the mullahs of his own court, like Shar Hindi, etc., Badauni, etc., stand against him entirely. So there's a very long panorama which we are seeing, because there's a long reign which Akbar had seen through. And what I see this man is, I would say that he was a very explorative man. He was into a lot of explorations. He was very enthusiastic about a lot of things, and he tried to experiment a lot. Now, let me start with the idea of Dine Ilahi, for which he gets the maximum praise, right? So, Dine Ilahi also very interesting incidents which happened, and before Dine Ilahi came into the picture, we already had a thing called a decree of Akbar, uh, which uh, which is called also the Mazharnama, or the infallibility decree, which came in 1579. So according to that, Akbar became the Sultan of Islam, and so this is happening in 1579, and Dine Ilahi comes to existence in 1583-84 के आसपास. And just 10 years before 1579, when this degree of infallibility has come, he has awarded Badauni in 1568 with 56 gold coins, when Badauni claims that I want to go into the battle. It is the battle of reference to battle of Haldi Ghati, and I want to color my beard with the blood of the infidels. He tells it, and when Akbar was not, जब वो पहले court में आता है, when he comes initially in the court, Akbar gives no bow to him, no value. That when he says this, he's certainly so happy, and he calls for the person to bring 56 gold coins, and this 56 Ashrafi is given to Badauni. It's happening in 1568. 1579, this decree of infallibility has come, where he has declared himself Sultan of Islam, and like, I'm like the Caliph. And within this period, he has been sending a lot of money to Makkah in the batches of say 5 lakhs, 6 lakhs, 7 lakhs, all the time to Makkah. His intention is to become the Caliph, the Khalifa. He was always a very ambitious person, and somebody who I would say that he did not give two hoots to the religion in this period. It is all that I want to be the one. And then
it's about power.
Yes. And because the Turks were in power back then, they were the caliphs. So they did not like this idea of Akbar luring the Makkan sharifs. What he was basically, जब 6 लाख रुपए भेजे जाते थे, 6 लाख में से 1 lakh would be as a bribe to the sharif, and बाकी 5 lakh is being donated to the people, ये वो जो जितने भी Muslims वहां पे आते हैं. So the Turks cut this off, this whole business of Akbar, and they kicked him out of the business entirely. And I use the word kick very cautiously, because he was literally kicked out. Like, Akbar was shown his place by the Turks, that you are not the caliph, we are the caliphs. And when this happens, then he comes with the idea that let me introduce a decree of infallibility. And then that's when the Ahmad Shirindi raises the voice that, you can't call yourself that, and this is utter nonsense. It goes against the Islam, all the Qattar Muslims who were there in his court. And then he comes with the idea that because his court fellows are going against him, can I found my own religion? And that's when the idea of Dine Ilahi comes into the picture. That let me create a new religion, a new sect altogether, which I will lead, which ultimately failed, because it was largely dominated by a very lot of Orthodox Muslims like Shirindi and many other people. So as Ibadat Khana will be attended by very less people, not many, but there were a lot of discussions which will happen around Christianity, there were discussions which will happen around Hinduism, a lot of things churned. But his idea was that how I can become a leader of a religion. Like, he wanted to become a caliph, he can't become a caliph, then he brings this decree of infallibility, and then he finds this religion called Dine Ilahi. So you see this progression. Now, in the past, Akbar had done a lot of ugly things. Like, he had one very ugly policy that if a woman walks into the public without a veil, she will be made a prostitute. So again, this is told to us by Badauni. Now, Badauni is criticized for saying that he was very critical of Akbar because he had some very 36 ka ankada with Akbar. He couldn't tolerate Akbar because Akbar was not very orthodox. But we see that in the Badauni's text, there's a lot of praise for Akbar for taking a lot of Islamic calls. like one of these. This comes from the Badani's text. And when we read about the Fateh-nama Chittor, where he talks about when he takes the Chittor, and we see that the kind of ravishes which has done. And in fact, Jamal and Patta's statues were made outside his new city. And it was the idea that they will act like a darban to me. It was more of a humiliation. It was not out of a respect, but a humiliation that he made this statue standing like a darban to him. And there's a lot of instances where we see the bigotry of Akbar post this period. But later on, he began to mature enough to see that how I can become more powerful. His ambitions were quite stronger, and he wanted to be somebody.
So then how? So clearly Akbar was not Aurangzeb. Akbar was
Yes.
more interested in political domination, and violence that he used was just a tool to attain power. Now that is an analysis that is constantly used for Aurangzeb too. Then what is so uniquely different about Akbar, and why can't that be used against or against me? Sorry, for Aurangzeb. Why was Aurangzeb more driven by religion and Akbar not so? Because it's a clear case of both.
So, as far as the case of Akbar is concerned, started off with a very religious person. He was ultra orthodox because, in fact, there's an instance where he got a grave of a Shia saint dug out because he was buried right in the close proximity to the grave of Amir Khusro. So Amir Khusro was a Sunni, and it was a problem to Akbar that how can a Shia be buried just next to so the pious Sunni, and the words like heretic, etc., are used. So he got the body exhumated, the body was taken out, and so such was the level of bigotry of Akbar in the initial days. And again, this we can talk, we get the reference of this in Akbar Nama very clearly. Now, as the things goes ahead, he starts to get away from the religion because he sees that he's not getting power, nothing more is happening, because he needs a lot of Rajput alliance too to reinforce on what he's doing. He can't really establish this empire without their help and support. And after the siege of Chittor, the things changed drastically for Akbar, and the alliance does happen. And but that helped the Hindus too, because the king and the Raja Man Singh, etc., were doing a lot for Hindus. They were trying to save a lot of temples, and there's a lot of theories that perhaps it was the Rajput alliance which began to moderate Akbar. He began to become a more of a moderate person, and there was a change in the thought process of Akbar entirely. But in the case of Aurangzeb, he has already got an empire which is quite established one, which has got enough of power. For Akbar, it was like building from the scratch, because Humayun was not a he was a very weak king, and in fact he had become Shia also to save his kingdom, and then he comes back to India, and the empire again starts to flourish. But empire was taken to a certain scale only by Akbar, and once he has taken to this scale, then comes the Jahangir, and Jahangir becomes a little orthodox. Shah Jahan is ultra orthodox as it goes further, and then Aurangzeb is just step uh, ahead of them, because he is like सब कुछ आपको मिल चुका है. You have already got an established empire where a lot of homework has been done. All you have to do is that bend your policies what you wish to do. And Aurangzeb had a childhood which was a disturbed one. And again, I'm not trying to play that folly that कोई terrorist इसलिए बनता है कि उसका बचपन. I'm not trying to get into that, but he certainly faced a lot of punishment at the hand of Shah Jahan. He was always differentiated against in front of other brothers, that he was always shown that he's the bad one. He will be given the worst of the postings, like he was sent to become governor in the places where no one likes to go, right? He faced a lot. So in all these circumstances, he was already growing a lot of contempt against his father all along. And while this happened, it was always the mullahs of the court which were by the side of Aurangzeb, and he always saw the support of the faith in the Allah or the religion which will help him out. Or perhaps that was the reason that religion became a very essential tool for Aurangzeb. And I would say that he followed it holistically. People may differ today and say that वो शायद इस्लाम को अच्छे से follow नहीं करता, but by looking at the conviction and the words of Aurangzeb, he was a very committed Muslim because he did make living even by sieving the skull caps. So he was too much into the orthodoxy, and he followed the Naqshbandi Sufism per se. That's what his sect was, and yeah.
Look, what I understand is that this is again my opinion. I don't know if you agree. In fact, you understand Aurangzeb very well if you study Aurangzeb in the light of Akbar. You actually get Aurangzeb and his bigotry much better when you study Akbar. Akbar was a very reasonable stand. See, I have a very balanced view of all historical figures. They are people of their time. I actually understand that. The moral arc was very different at that time. Like, people just thought some things were normal. Like, ऐसे ही random टपका देना, ऐसे उंगलियां काट देना, नाखून खींच लेना, मतलब the level of barbarism that is just studied in ancient text and just normalized in ancient text is very scary. Like, we don't do that shit anymore. And, we have become better than those people in many ways. But अब क्या हो रहा है कि यार अभी औरंगजेब को नॉर्मल करने के चक्कर में है ना, मुझे लगता है अकबर भी पेला जाएगा.
Well, that's going to happen for sure. And जैसे मैं आपको I said it also that Akbar's later policies are not at all religious, and they are more driven by ambition, pragmatism. As जब उसको लगा कि यहाँ मेरा नहीं पकड़ा है, so he went on to create अपना ही religion बना दिया. You can't expect any
भाई,
ruler of
I
that
like
time.
अकबर. उसको अरे आज से अपन अपना रिलीजन बनाएगा, ऐसा ही होना चाहिए.
So he just formed his religion that I will lead. So let go the Turks. I will create my own religion, and he went ahead to do it. But Aurangzeb is just class apart. You can't really put them in the same bucket. It is impossible. Of course, I can't whitewash the evils what Akbar has done in the initial phases, but that's a different subject altogether. But to make a comparison between these two historical characters with a lot of parallels will be absurdity if you take my point of view here, or my two paisa at it. Akbar may be 1,000 times bad. It's different badness. It's different. It's all different being him the kind of bad, but it's no way comparable to Aurangzeb. Not at all.
My biggest fear in this entire attempt to normalize Aurangzeb is that the right wing of India, the loony right wing of India, will try to do what the left is doing to normalize Aurangzeb. They will try to malign Akbar more than what he deserves. And the entire loser in this process is real history and people who want to read history from a normal perspective. This is what annoys me. Like, it is so irritating to me that, we had a consensus debate. Akbar, whatever he did was from a political prism, genuinely from a political prism. वो साला दल बदलू, वो जब बदलना था बदल लेता था अपना स्टैंड. उसको मतलब अरे दिस वर्क्स, यहाँ पे रिलीजन कार्ड खेलो, इधर नहीं, अभी नया रिलीजन बनेगा. So it's fine. I mean, I actually don't mind a guy like Akbar. But with Aurangzeb, we all agreed कि ये तो जानवर ही है. But now the left is trying to normalize him. और इसका रिएक्शन होगा. इसका रिएक्शन वही WhatsApp यूनिवर्सिटी राइट विंग थर्ड रेटेड हिस्ट्री होगी, and the loser will be the average Indian जो वैसे ही गधा है.
I completely hear you, Kushal bhai. And if you remember when we spoke about Babar, right?
Yeah.
The Babar one.
Yeah.
So I just told you that I have tried to humanize Babar because it's very important to see somebody from a human perspective. And it's not a political pamphlets which we are distributing कि आपका मुझे खून खौलाना है. That's not my purpose. My purpose is आपके खून को शांत रखना है और आपको थोड़ा सा जो मैंने ज्ञान अर्जन किया अगर मैं शेयर कर सकता हूँ, that's fine. That's what we are doing. Now, in Babar one, while Babar was a very good personality, it all came out as a kind of a balanced ruler and trying to make his way out. बेचारे की हालत थी उसकी and he became non-alcoholic, first being alcoholic and whatever, right?
Yeah.
Now, when Babar 2 comes, it brings a lot of things in the light where he's going on this whole idea of jihad, which has become an integral part of his life, etc. But now, if I don't talk about the ills of Babar, I will lose the purpose of talking good about Babar and vice versa. Now, in either of a case, he does not fit like a hero because he has not done anything great or magnificent apart from, you know, or वो होता है ना कि even if you're a very bad player, like if someone plays cricket, you would know that even if he's a very bad player and if I've been practicing for 25 years, at least he will end up making 50 odd runs. वो कर लेता है. So Babar was attempting so much to build an empire. He could build something. वो कर पाया. And now, as we move towards Akbar का panorama, when I say panorama, it means जब हम पूरा picture उसका सामने रख दे रहे हैं, it will be more on that line only, where it will start with his barbarism, as how, because it's 13-year-old, filled with a lot of zeal to do something good. He feels that I have to establish the empire, and he's being guided by Bayram Khan, right, who is his guardian angel that way. And so सब कुछ वो किसी के देख रेख में कर रहा है. He's doing all in the guidance of somebody, and he's building on that, right? To expect that he would be singing the song of secularism or say the ideals of today, right from the day he has sat on the throne, is not going to be possible. Right? It's just next to impossible, right? But as he goes ahead, he becomes a very practical ruler. That's why he was able to expand an empire to that extent. Otherwise, वो expand थोड़ी कर पाता. He wouldn't have been able to expand. Now, in this case, it will be important for the right wing to really begin to analyze these characters in the right way, because then you will lose the whole battle against the narrative. And losing the battle against the narrative becomes a slippery slope, because if you're writing a book, or say that if we are producing a book, anybody for that matter, does not matter that if you clap for me, Kushal bhai, it does not matter, because I may feel good for a while कि हाँ मैंने अच्छी किताब लिख दी है, सब कुछ बड़ा बढ़िया है, right? I may clap for you, but the point is that if my book cannot add a value for a debate with the person I see that is creating a problem, अगर ऐसा नहीं कर पाए तो मेरे बुक का कोई वैल्यू नहीं है. It holds no value. It's a रद्दी के भाव में उसको फाड़ के फेंक देना चाहिए. And it can never happen until unless you have been very truthful to your account, because your account is not to inflame the people. Your account is to fight a battle where the villains are being made heroes or whatsoever, like just for this lack of vocabulary if I put it. And you can never win this battle if you start making ultra hero out of the hero and ultra villain out of the villain where it does not exist. So it's very important to be very truthful, be very balanced, and trust the people who go into doing the balanced biographical account rather than just one pamphlet edition where I will talk all the ills of Akbar. And I can assure people that when I talk about Akbar, it will have all. It will not just be about what he does in Chittor or what he does with his laws, like making the woman without the will, the prostitute. There was a lot more than that. His whole diverse policies, his policies are very interesting. The way he makes the policies. It was not so easy to build an empire. It was a very good case study, in fact, I would say, to see that how empires were built.
Yeah. And one more example I can give here is when I covered Vikram's book on Tipu. In fact, when I read Vikram's book on Tipu, I mean, मैंने तो proofread की थी Vikram के लिए. You know what I came across? Like, I remember my phone call with Vikram, और तभी मैंने विक्रम को बोला था, यार, the one thing I found out is that टीपू का बाप इतना पागल नहीं था.
Yes.
And Vikram and I were having this casual conversation. I'm not saying he was some hero or something. क्या नाम था उसका? हैदर अली ना?
हैदर अली.
हाँ. So, Hyder Ali, that he has a problem with Tipu talking to all these Maulvis and Maulanas, and his worry is that ये साला मेरे बच्चे को religious zealot और bigot बना देंगे. Why? Because Hyder Ali के दिमाग में था, भाई power में रहो, ये religion इतना ज़्यादा करो मत. And the exact thing happened. Tipu became a religious zealot. So actually, the Akbar, Aurangzeb, or the Hyder Ali Tipu analysis, these are the things that we need to happen. But then, WhatsApp पे Mustafa, हमारा जो राइट विंग है और जो लेफ्ट विंग है वो व्हाट्सएप नहीं है, वो अपनी दुनिया के मुस्तफा है, वो अपनी पहली रहते हैं. ये लोग ये अपने एक्चुअली दे आर मेड फॉर ईच अदर. द राइट विंग नट जॉब्स एंड द लेफ्ट विंग नट जॉब्स, दे आर मेड फॉर ईच अदर. द ओनली प्रॉब्लम इज हिस्ट्री गेट्स डिस्ट्रॉयड व्हेन दीज टू नट जॉब्स कम टुगेदर.
but it is what it is. But before we wrap up, Aabhas, because it's and once again, I'm really sorry about that initial half an hour mess up. I don't know what had happened today. सब कुछ ठीक चल रहा था until it started. So, is there anything else do you think we need to cover as far as the Timurids or the Mughals are concerned, as to long-term analysis of how we look at these historical figures?
See, there are one thing is very of all the debates, one debate which has never ignited, or rather when it is ignited from the right wing, it has moved without a substance, is about when we say that it's very important to really see if these Timurids slash Mughals saw themselves as Indians or not. Again, when I'm talking about this, I want to talk it with the sources. I don't want to be like, हाँ मुझे ऐसा लगता है because वो बाहर से आए तो वो नहीं ऐसा नहीं है. Because I was very curious about it, and when you would remember once Sanjeev Sanyal had said on Smita Prakash's podcast that Mughals had a roadblock, so that's why they could not go. He used it metaphorically. कुछ ऐसा बोला था उन्होंने. And then whole left wing went against roadblock kya hota hai, and all those kind of nonsense began to happen. And that pushed me to look into the sources. And when I dug the sources, I was surprised that right from the period of Babar till Aurangzeb, they always ended up having a quest to get back Samarkand. And they always addressed the people of the land of Samarkand as their own. They were considered as a subject. It comes from their records. Like when we talk about Akbar, Abul Fazl's record talks about it. They spent a lot to conquer back the bulk, get back to the Samarkand. They always saw it as a homeland. And we see this as a continuous chain. एक के बाद और सबसे extensive effort किसी ने लिया था, तो it was Shahjahan, and later on a bit Aurangzeb kept trying that how do I get back Samarkand. They always had this nostalgia. और औरंगजेब खुद को तुरानी बहुत क्लियरली बुलाता था. He always used to call himself Turani. He never saw himself like they're addressing themselves with certain nationality, like we are the Turani or whatever, right? That time there was no concept of nationality per se, but they never saw themselves as Indians. That is also very clear. And perhaps we can take it up some other time, whether they were with the sources. Maybe that we can do a presentation format thing next time, where we can put the sources also for the people to see that what exactly their books are saying, that whether they are feeling to be Indians or not.
Yeah, we can do that. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Actually, वो अगर तू कभी बॉम्बे आ रहा है तो मेरे को बताना, घर पे बैठ के करेंगे आराम से शांति से. It would be great. Or we can also do it digitally. I mean, we have all the tools over here to make a presentation and put it across. But that's the thing, right? These are the fundamental questions that we need to be having a discussion. Like I'll give you another example of inequality under the Mughals. वो स्वरा भास्कर, अरे यार स्वरा भास्कर अभी हिस्टोरियन हो गई है. एक्टिंग ही कर ले बहन बराबर से, तू हिस्टोरियन भी बनी फिरती है. मतलब there are clear records that income inequality under the Mughals was even worse than under the British. Like the British did not do a number on us like the Mughals did a number on us. यार कुछ तो शर्म करो यार, तुम लोग कुछ भी बोलते रहते हो. अभी स्वरा भास्कर भी हिस्टोरियन है. हर आदमी, मैं तो अपने आप को हिस्टोरियन नहीं बोलता, मैं तो किताबें पढ़ता हूँ. मैं हिस्टोरियन तो नहीं हूँ, बट स्वरा भास्कर अभी हिस्टोरियन भी है, पॉलिटिकल एनालिस्ट भी है, एक्टर भी है, सब कुछ है वो. अभी क्या बोले यार, इस देश को बर्बाद करके रख दिया है लोगों ने. बेवकूफ, मतलब वो बोलते हैं ना, ये देश चुनौतियों से नहीं चू से भरा हुआ है. इस देश की समस्या चुनौतियां नहीं है, वो दूसरा वाला चू है. मतलब यही हाल है. पता नहीं क्या लोग हैं, ऐसे ही सब करते रहते हैं. बहुत दुख होता है मेरे को. And I genuinely feel like historical characters like Akbar get maligned in this process, because I know the loony right wing will do it. I know it. I know it is going to happen. I await the day where the loony right wing of India. I am not saying Akbar was some saint. Historical characters are not saints. But I am saying Akbar was no Aurangzeb. यार वो मैटर करता है. औरंगजेब एक बहुत बड़ा जल्लाद था. Can we have some nuance? And Ashoka was not great. अशोका में बहुत फ्लॉस थे. And अभी तक तो वहां नहीं गए हैं. If we start digging up, Rajput records, Maratha records, like Peshwas views on Rajputs views on Peshwas, वो तो एक अलग ही खड्डा खोद देंगे हम लोग. फिर तो ऐसा है कि मैं अगर अमेरिका का पासपोर्ट लेके जब उधर बैठा हूंगा ना, तब मैं ये सारी बातें करना शुरू करूंगा. नहीं तो ये आके मेरा घर जला देंगे साले पागल. लोग ऐसे पागल है, ये लोग ने पढ़ा है, मतलब मैं इन लोगों को, ये लोग अगर राजपूत रिकॉर्ड्स एंड देयर व्यूज ऑन अदर किंगडम्स पढ़ लें तो इनके साथ क्या होगा? ये हिस्ट्री के बारे में क्या डिस्कशन कर सकते हैं इस देश में? ऐसे इमोशनल लोग, ऐसे तो बेवकूफ हैं, अभी क्या बोले?
Because you brought this up, Kushal bhai, so I'll just add one more point here. अभी राणा संगा के बारे में इतनी सारी बातें चल रही है.
है.
So yes, so I'll just talk only about the source. Okay, I will not get into the analysis. I have got two primary sources. One is मेवाड़ का संक्षिप्त इतिहास, which is the Rajput records, right? Second source is बाबरनामा. बाबरनामा में बाबर बोलता है कि राणा सांगा ने मुझे बुलाया और मुझे प्रॉमिस किया, एक ट्रीटी हुई हमारे बीच में. राजपूत सोर्स जो है मेवाड़ का संक्षिप्त इतिहास, उसके हिसाब से अकॉर्डिंग टू दैट इट इज सेड दैट राणा सांगा got was asked for the help by Babar. Babar asked the help to Rana Sanga that you help me please. Okay, and this is again a primary record. It is coming from that. It's a contemporary, two contemporary sources, both sources saying different point of views. Now, what a historian would do, they will start to do a triangulation using other sources. What is the most probable thing? Kya ho sakta hai? That's how the historian should approach, because you have got two contemporary sources saying two different things. Now, the Rajput source further adds that Rana Sanga broke the treaty, as in broke the agreement, rather, that he did not honor the agreement of helping Babar, because some wise people in the Rajput confederacy told Rana Sanga that सांप को दूध नहीं पिलाते, you should not give the milk to the snake, right? So that's why he chose not to, and that was strategic call to not support, not help Babar or honor that treaty. Now, Babar has used a lot of exaggeration, like number of armies at times, to show that uski army बहुत छोटी थी and the Rajput army was too big, right? Which is further debunked by further historian like Farishta, is a Muslim historian. He debunks it very clearly. There are many other Muslim records which show that Babar, when it comes to the war, he exaggerates a lot of things, tried to play that a victim, play karne ka, that I was always a victim, and which perhaps looks like a case because his childhoods were disturbed. You remember we were talking once, we were talking about Babar because his childhood was so disturbed. So he always seek the sympathy of somebody, kuch karke, and in fact his diary would also show of that expression. So yes, there was a treaty between Sanga and Rana Sanga and Babar. But surely we cannot conclude whether Babar invited Rana Sanga or Rana Sanga invited Babar, or rather what it was the case, but treaty happened. And surely it also appears that Babar used to exaggerate his stories to play the victim, which is analyzed by other Muslim historians. So these are the case in front of us, but there's no point finding today that whether Rana Sanga invited Babar or not, right? Because it really make no sense to do a debate also around it, because we can never reach to the conclusion.
Yeah, some things we're never going to know. I think this is the perfect way to summarize, our discussion today. History is a constant. History is a work in progress, ladies and gentlemen. I know it for a fact, not because Aabhas is someone I'm very fond of and I know him well. Like, for him to just study what Babar said, the poor guy actually learned Persian. वो साला बैठ के पर्शियन सीखने शुरू हो गया. Then he started translating these things. These things take a lot of hard work. यार आप साला एक आर्टिकल पढ़ लोगे कोई फुदू लेफ्ट विंग पोर्टल का या कोई फुदू राइट विंग पोर्टल का, and then you're just going to read a WhatsApp forward and then you think you know history. Yeah, have some shame at least. Have some respect for people like Aabhas, Vikram Sampath, and many on the left also, who spend hours and hours and hours like reading, scanning. Like, I know. I'll give you an example. I just covered the Hedgewar book with Sachin Nanda. I know Sachin for more than now 12, 13 years. Frick, I don't even remember how long I know Sachin. I know the kind of hard work Sachin had to do in the last 7 years to read extensive archives of Hedgewar. Go to the British records, come to India. Poor guy was walking on the streets trying to simulate how Hedgewar would feel. This is the level of hard work that you have to do when you write something on a historical figure. And you think you will get it in a WhatsApp forward. यार कुछ तो शर्म कर लो. Have some decency, have some appreciation for someone's work. Like, if you want to understand Babar, go read Abbas's book. If you want to have a discussion on Mughals, you can start by reading the works of Jadunath Sarkar. That's a great resource. Go read Jadunath Sarkar. Like, spend some time, or don't have an opinion. Don't be like the left. And I sincerely blame the left of India for creating this mess, because they lied so much, so brazenly, that the non-left was like, अबे हम भी पेलेंगे. और non-left का क्या होता है, वो पुष्पक विमान के साथ पेलते हैं, which is even more irritating. को ऐसे उड़ते उड़ते पेलते हैं. लेफ्ट दूसरी फेकोलॉजी करते हैं, ये लोग दूसरी फेकोलॉजी करते हैं. दोनों साले फेंकू बैठे हुए हैं. And you know who suffers? Suffers are genuine people like Aabhas, genuine people like Vikram Sampath. These are real historians, boss. These are real people. They are just driven by these things. So please think about what we have tried to say today. Are Mughals heroes? I don't know. Aurangzeb clearly was a villain. That I can say for sure. The rest of the Mughals, I don't know is my answer. I don't like them. I'm actually not against Akbar. I will not lie. I am not. That's my personal view. I am not pushing those views on Abbas. But Abbas, as always, a pleasure talking to you, and all the best.
Thank you so much, Kushal bhai. It was indeed a pleasure picking up this topic and doing a bit of banter around it. I don't know how much sense it made, but I think both of us spoke by heart, and it was good. Let's see how it is received.
It is great. So, guys, we'll end up shutting down the podcast today. Before we end up, I want to apologize again for the first half an hour. वो पता नहीं क्या issue था. I actually had to change laptops live between. It was just something. Sometimes you have to restart the laptop. Some RAM issue must have been there, but I apologize for that. But see, this is the risk you run when you do a live stream. But live streams are a lot more fun, because then you get to interact with live audiences. Please consider supporting the Cārvāka podcast by joining the membership program. This podcast only runs on members, which is why I can do these odd discussions. It is that tiny, minuscule number of members that actually create this freedom to experiment with subjects. Otherwise, right now, I should be doing only Waqf board discussions. I'm being very serious. Or just watch IPL and, keep talking about IPL, thala for a reason. Then I'll get clicks. But at a time like this, the reason I'm able to discuss something on the Timurids, the Mughals, is because of memberships. So please join the membership program if you want to support such ventures, whether on YouTube, whether on Patreon. You want to buy Cārvāka podcast merchandise, try it out on Kadak Merch or on kushalmehra.com. You want to send one-time donations in India, UPI ID is kushalmehra@ICICI. You want to send donations from Canada, Interac Canada, kushalmehra81@gmail.com is the email ID. If you want to buy my book, Nastik, Why I'm Not an Atheist, the link is in the description. You want to buy Aabhas's book of Babar, the link is also there in the description. My X handle is also there in the description. Aabhas's is also. Go follow him. If you can't do any of that, and if you get eternal pleasure out of abusing me, the comment section is always open. जी भर के गालियां देना, इतनी गालियां देना ना, दो अल्फाबेट हर एक कमेंट में लिखना, ऐसे गालियां देना. लाइक करना वीडियो को और सब्सक्राइब करना चैनल को. And if you're an audio listener, just leave a rating in your favorite audio platform. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.